The human dilemma. I'd suggest to you we've got two things we have to deal with all the time. One is this issue of questioning the big issues with the macro view along here. And then the daily life, we have to live our lives. And the challenge is to do both. To do both. Because the problem is the more we question our life and question meaning and try to make sense in a world that doesn't necessarily make sense, depending on your belief system, but the more we question that world, the tougher it is to get up and live our daily lives and go about our daily routine, if you will. So if we live life here, always questioning meaning, high on the scale, way up here, and we can drive ourselves crazy and we can't function in daily life. And I have friends like that. Conversely, we can also, focus on the daily life and I can do well, but I never question anything. And I just follow the pattern. I go to school and I go to university because my parents want me to. I get a job because I'm supposed to. I get married because I'm supposed to. I have children. I follow this pattern of existence. And I gradually go old. I wait for my retirement. And eventually I face my friend's death, my family's death, and then I have to deal with my own. And I can do that without questioning, although it's very difficult. The challenge, I would argue to you, is that we have to do both. We have to question our lives and what it means to be human, and what is this world? Come on in, guys. Hi, Delano. And question this world. At the same time, we've got to deal with our daily lives. We've got to deal with our daily lives. And it can be very difficult to do both. Deal with daily living, and you could argue the minutiae of our lives, and a lot of the mundane things that we do, but that is the human experience. At the same time, we question our lives. What is the point? What is the meaning? What is this world we're creating? How should I live? What is death? The deeper questions of life. It's being argued there's a progress paradox going on right now. In North America, indeed most of the Western world, we have, in the past 100 or couple hundred years, enormous improvements, if you will. Technology, medical care, we live far longer, we're safer. At least us here. A lot of people in the world are not safe. But in North America, we tend to be safer. And we live more comfortable lives. We live more comfortable lives. So on one hand, you could say, aren't things getting better and better? This is good. But there's a problem that people are arguing. At the same time, increased stress, anxiety, depression levels, you could argue we're becoming a medicated society, Prozac, fatigue, we've become quite obsessed with consumerism. It's being argued that the church is the new mall, or the mall is the new church. Celebrity worship. And it's questionable whether happiness levels have changed in a long time. And so whether we're any better off is debatable. And I would question, has humanity itself actually evolved at all, despite our societal improvements? Has humanity evolved? Has the human species evolved? So it's an interesting paradox, the good and the bad. The meaningful life. I want to live a life that's meaningful, but I don't know what that means really. I don't know what that means. I know I want to, on my deathbed, look back at my life and say, I'm okay with the life I lived. But I'm not sure what that means and how I should live, and it keeps changing as I go through my cycles of life and I get older. Varying perspectives on the meaningful life, and we could argue about these. You can take a religious perspective, a higher power, and we can argue whose God is better than whose God. You can take a nihilistic perspective and say that there is no meaning, and even the question itself is wrong. That there's no meaning to be found, and we're ants thrown onto this world. Or you can take a kind of creation or finding meaning, that meaning is something that we create. What most scholars do agree with, though, that it is a subjective interpretation of how we experience, and I emphasize experience, our lives. How we experience our lives and determine whether they are meaningful to us. It's also being argued that we have a meaning deficit, that we're living shallow lives. And again, this issue, we're getting better off in so many ways, but we're busy, we work a lot, hours of work have gone up, workaholism, all sorts of problems. Are we better off or not is the question. And then we have this funny thing called work, this thing that we have constructed in our society. This work where we go each day and we have to make money to live, although we could just share the resources and not use money. There's other alternatives, of course. But we have this thing called work. And now it's being argued that we should find our meaning through work. And so people are being encouraged, find your calling through work. But that's a lot of pressure on our work life. It's like saying that, hey, my partner in life is responsible for all my happiness. And inevitably, they're probably going to let you down in that regard because you can't maintain that. So the question of where does work fit in this quest for the meaningful life? Ginny states, work is the most common experience of adult life. Some love it, others hate it, but few of us are able to avoid it. Because we spend 2/3 of our waking life on the job, work is the way we come to know the world and are known to the world. Rightly or wrongly, work in our present society, in the Western world anyhow, has been privileged. And we have put this thing that meaning and happiness in life is supposed to come through work. I don't think that's necessarily wrong, but I think whenever we follow things blindly without questioning, there's a problem. Work for many is great, but for a lot of people, stress, anxiety, depression, workaholism, alienation in the workplace, what Gareth Morgan said was a psychic prison, daily drudgery, and working for the weekend or waiting for retirement. And when you think of how many years and how much time we invest in this in work, and if you think of this as the result for some people, it's sad. Because we do have choices on how we exist on this planet. We have choices. You'll see that gentleman here pushing the boulder up. This is the legend, the myth of Sisyphus. Sisyphus was condemned by the gods to have to push the boulder up the mountain, and then the boulder would roll down, and Sisyphus would have to go back down and push it up again and continue to do this throughout eternity. And it's used kind of as a symbol for those who believe work is daily drudgery, of continually pushing the rock up the mountain, only to see it roll back down. Now, we have a new player in the market, or a new player in the mix. We have the Center for Spirituality and Work, and we're very fortunate to have Vince Brewerton as our executive director, and I do enjoy our conversations. You stimulate me to think, which I love. We have this thing called Spirituality in the Work, which emerged late 80s? Yeah, around the late 80s it emerged, where people said, hey, we got to bring spirit and work together. And so scholars and lay people started to argue that we have for the integration of spirit and work and for work to be meaningful. And it's interesting because it took off and some people jumped on the bandwagon and hey, we've got to promote spirituality in the workplace. But there's varying perspectives. Everyone can argue about it. Some people say it's religious proselytizing in the workplace. Students of mine did a presentation. They had a YouTube video where before the board meeting, everyone prayed for profits. And others say it's just, hey, we want workplaces where people treat each other decently, humane workplaces. So no one knows what this is. Like the meaningful life, which we can argue and debate, no one knows what spirituality in the workplace really means. And I would suggest there's a lot of questions. What is spirituality? I don't know what this is. To me, I'm conscious that I am. I'm conscious that I exist. At least I think I do. But maybe it's all a dream. I'm not sure. But I'm conscious that I exist. I'm conscious that I try to make sense of my life. What is spirituality at work? The argument that we have to bring our spirit to work implies that you can actually leave it home like a briefcase. And I know that wherever I go, the old saying, there I am. And that I can't leave it at home like a briefcase. So bringing spirit to work, kind of an interesting contradiction. What is meaningful work? Is it humane workplaces? Worthwhile activities? Values congruence? I'm doing work that meets my value system? No one knows really what it is. And the question is, can all work be made meaningful?